Welcome back to another episode. Deborah, we have been way overdue for this podcast episode. I feel like I've tried reaching out to you, I tried finding you, and then life happens to us. So thank you so much for making the time to finally be here with me and also with the listeners who I know will learn so much from you. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's really an honor to be on here. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Now, we want to start by making the listeners a little bit familiar with who you are, where are you recording from today, and also like tell us about like how did you grow up?
So I am in Seattle, Washington. I'm originally from Panama, and I've lived in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State since I was 6. So I've been here a long time.
You're
And then,
you're you're from here.
yeah. I mean, ni de aquí de allá.
Yeah.
And uh, what was the other question?
So the other question that I want to ask you is I want to know like how did you grow up and what was your relationship with money?
So I grew up, we moved to the United States because my father was in the army. He was stationed in Panama and he wanted to be closer to family. And my mom said, okay. So we moved to the United States. And I think that moving to the United States, having lost his brother, coming back from Vietnam, and having my sister be born with Down syndrome was too much for my father to handle. And his drinking and his absenteeism got worse and worse. And so my parents fought about money all the time. And there were so many times during my childhood when, the electricity was cut off or the phone was cut off and my mother had to scramble to figure out how to do, how to feed us until finally she divorced my father. That was when, surprisingly, when women's income goes down after a divorce. But in our case, even though my mother's income went down, we were still able to sustain some semblance of a decent life because my mother was able to find work and she was able to keep up with all the bills and keep up with things. First, it was seeing my parents fight over money, and then it was watching my mother struggle, working low paid jobs where she was discriminated against for being Latina or for being a woman or for being an immigrant. And so that was my relationship with money all through my childhood and my teenage years. So very, very negative connotations surrounding money.
Thank you for sharing. And I have been following your journey not only as someone who wants to create generational wealth, but also someone who is now a financial counselor, someone who is helping other people. And so why did you decide to get into this industry? Because I mean, you could have
Mm.
just been like, not for me, right? I had a iffy relationship with money, but you decided to take charge not only of your journey, but also helping others. So can you walk us through your decision process?
So throughout my 20s and 30s and 40s, I was a disaster with money. I was married and my husband at the time and I just were not were not paying attention to our money. And so it wasn't until after my divorce and about a month before, well, I was about 3 years, let's see, in 47, I had to apply for bankruptcy to save my house from foreclosure. And then I went through the whole process. I did all that and my petition was rejected. So my petition, it was dismissed is what it's called in those terms. And then when that didn't work out, I went to mediation. I went through all the steps to try to save my house again. And at 49, so 2 years after, I applied again for bankruptcy to try to save my house. And again, that was dismissed. And I was faced with no other option other than to either lose my house in foreclosure or sell. And I didn't want to sell. I'd owned that house for over 20 years, and that's where my kids grew up. That's where my mother and my sister lived with me. And it was a devastating choice to have to make. And in the end, I ended up selling with the support of my mother and my kids. I said, this isn't working out anymore. I don't want to lose the house. And because I had some equity in the house, I was able to walk away with a little bit of cash. And it was a really, really hard decision. I felt a lot of anger, a lot of shame, a lot of embarrassment. But in the end, I was able to focus on providing for my family. And I didn't ever want my family, my kids especially, obviously, to have to run into something like that. So right away, I started building up my credit. I started saving money. I put that money to work, the money that I got from the sale of the house. And I started to talk about it on Instagram because I wanted to just kind of put it out there and share what I had been through. And then little by little, I started getting questions and people saying, "Oh, so how did you come back from this? And how did you grow your credit score? And how did you get over all of the challenges?" And so then I thought, well, it's not, and the people who were asking were people in their 40s. People, I'm Gen X. I turned 55 yesterday. And
Late
I
birthday.
still thank you. And I see so many people my age and my generation who are facing a lot of financial challenges because of everything that we have faced throughout, our lives as Gen Xers.
Yeah.
And so I do it for them, but I also do it for my children because I don't want my children to have the same trauma relationship with money that I had. And I've been pretty good at doing that because they all say to me, "Mama, I look to you. I want to do what you're doing." And then they talk to their friends, which is really cool, And so I feel like it's kind of spreading everything and showing also people that it's not too late. I mean, I don't have $1 million saved for retirement. I didn't start taking it seriously until a month before my 50th birthday. And now I'm in the upper five figures for retirement. And so, yeah, it's going
And
to
I
take me
love that for
longer.
you.
But when I started this journey, I had less than $10,000 saved for retirement. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be able to retire when I want to. I'm not going to have $1 million, but I'm going to have a good chunk of change.
And I love
And
that for you, Deborah.
that
One of the
that's
things
really
that
important.
really inspire me. Hold on, let me fix my hair. For those of you that are watching the video, you know what I mean. One of the reasons that really inspire me about the contact that you are putting out is the fact that you were talking about one thing that it's so secretive in the system where we live, and that is the financial shame, and that is
Hmm.
that is given to those that use foreclosure or bankruptcy as a way to really start fresh. And I will say, when I started my journey as an educator, I also didn't want to talk about that option because I was like, but wait a minute, why should my clients do that instead of following these traditional debt payoff strategies? But then once I became certified in trauma of money, that
Uh,
really opened my eyes to saying, you know what? Someone might really just need to do that, start from
mhm,
scratch, and
mhm.
also have the right support system to overcome any shame that comes with it, because you're not wrong by choosing that. It's not that you're not educated or that you're not smart enough. You're just choosing to literally tackle the root of the shame at the core. And
Yeah,
so for that, I want to say kudos to you, because
thank you.
you are the first guest on the podcast that talks about the foreclosure and the things that you had to go through. And I also want to talk about ADHD, because we need to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
When we started recording the podcast, you say I have it, and I want to say that I feel like I have it too. I haven't been diagnosed, but like, for example, right now I want to talk to you, and my hair moved again, and I'm like, I gotta fix it before I say something.
It's the fidgeting.
So many things that people and listeners that have ADHD go through, and no one is talking about that specific group except you. So for those people that don't know, can you tell us, like, because believe it or not, I didn't know what it was until 5 years ago.
Mhm,
Same thing with I didn't know that they were Afro Latinas. Hello,
mhm,
grew
mhm.
up in a small town. So when were you diagnosed with ADHD, and what are you letting that mean about you?
So I was diagnosed last year, just after turning 54. I got diagnosed because I have one kid who is at university, or who at the time was at university doing social work and studying a lot about the brain. And that child is now getting their master's degree in applied behavior analysis, studying a lot about disabilities in children and teens and adults. And they were like, Mama, have you ever thought of getting tested for ADHD? And this was like 5 years ago. And then my son, I have a son who has ADHD, who was diagnosed 2 years ago. And they were like, por favor, excuse me, por favor, mama, get seen. There's something going on. We've been wanting to say something for a long time. So I did. And I wasn't surprised, but I wasn't surprised that I actually had it. It's a form of executive dysfunction. But what made me angry was that all the years that I was talking about feeling overwhelmed and having this like not being able to do certain things and feeling really uncomfortable. And I thought maybe I was leaning more toward autism, which, there are a lot of the comorbidities between the two, but it explains a lot about how I grew up. It explains a lot about my challenges with money. And I see that in my son. And so with my son who has ADHD, I'm using a lot of the strategies that I'm learning for myself, and I'm using them with him. And, it's hard. It's really hard. So some things don't always work, but the fact that he actually is aware of it and he wants to try is a big deal.
And that is a superpower. Like, I want to say that, like, a lot of people in our society see these as a negative, or let me remove or subtract, but it's actually a
Yeah.
superpower. Like, most of the friends that I have now, like my really, really close friends, they also have it. And I have served some clients that also have it. And when I'm working with them, I'm like, this is your freaking superpower. Like, don't let anyone make you believe that you're less than because you have it. In fact, right now I'm working with the illustrator for my book, and she talks about how she has ADHD all along, and she has created the most amazing illustrations for the book, right? And so you were diagnosed and you start your money journey as well. What about the current way of finances and how some educators teach finances like drives you crazy? Because everyone is like, get a spreadsheet. Like, are you using a spreadsheet, or have you created your own way of
Mhm.
budgeting that works for you, investing that works for you? Can you kind of let us into your world a little bit?
Yeah. So I was one of those people who was always looking for a budget worksheet and looking for a way to put, because for me, like if I'm writing something down, rather than putting it in the computer, it tends to kind of reinforce what I'm putting in there. I don't forget it as easily. But that wasn't working because I would have to take too many steps. And that's something that people with ADHD have an issue with. It's like if you have a goal and you have to meet all these steps, by the time you get to the second or third step, you're burned out and you're just like, I can't do this anymore.
My brain doesn't like that.
And so a really good example of this is that I remember when my son would ask me, Mama, can we buy the sliced cheddar cheese? And I'm like, no, it's more expensive. We'll just get the block and then you can just, slice it yourself for a sandwich. And then it wasn't until I was like, that's an extra step and that's keeping me from making myself a cheese sandwich. So I said to him, I said, Papa, I get it now. And so now we buy the cheese that already comes in slices because there's one less step to take. And with
Exactly.
budgeting, for me, it's just easier to automate some things, pay things right away, like a bill, even if it's due at the end of March, I'll pay it right away because I'll forget about it. And what I do with my day to day money, I just put everything in an Excel spreadsheet and I put in there just so that I can see how much I'm spending on X thing and making sure that I don't go over the amount that I've allotted for that month. And
Yeah.
that's working right now. I've only been doing that for 2 months because I struggled with the worksheets. So it's basically do what works for your brain. If it's not working for your brain, if you're struggling and if you feel like it's not working, then try something else.
Have you tried any apps, Debbie? I'm curious. Have you tried any apps?
I tried, I tried You Need a Budget and I hated it. There was too large of a learning curve. There were too many steps. There were too many things going on and I hated it. I couldn't do it. And I've never tried any other apps because I also don't like I think this is a Gen X thing, a generational thing. I don't like a lot of different entities having my banking information when I've already got like my credit union, my high yield savings, my Fidelity, all these accounts are already linked. So,
And you are correct. It's because
you
of your
know,
generation, which I'm right behind you, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah. So
Well,
I
thank
just
you
feel
for
like,
explaining that, I so every month as part of like my certification to become a financial educator, I have to go every month to continue education.
huh,
And I remember the day when we had one of the speakers that was talking about how to help clients with ADHD, and it my mouth just dropped because I was like, how come there's no more people talking about it, especially
mhm,
after the pandemic, that a lot of people started to like
mhm,
actually noticing the quote unquote symptoms, right? Because now they had more time. And so I'm like, I just love watching you educate people. I love watching your journey. And I do want to celebrate you as well because you were featured in a massive
yeah.
outlet. Tell us about that.
So I wrote about a blog post about the bankruptcy and I posted it to Medium. So I post my blog posts that have to most of them I post to Medium also just so that they can be found and in case somebody doesn't find the website. And this reporter from the New York Times was like, "Hey, I saw your thing. Would you like to talk about it? We're working on a project." And so we interviewed in June or July last year. And she said she wanted to do this feature on people who'd gone through the process. And I said, well, both my cases were dismissed. And she said, that's okay. We want a variety of people. And so right before I went to Panama, she told me that they were thinking of waiting until after the election to publish the article, which they did. And yeah, so it's in the New York Times. I was like, whoa, thanks, Rachel. And that was really important for me, and I'm sure it was important for the other people who participate who were also featured, because the article showed how bankruptcy, yes, it can cause shame. Yes, you can work through it. But overall, what's really important for me to tell people about bankruptcy is that it's a tool. It's a tool that's there. It's a legal tool. There are no tricks about it. You can use it. And, the society that we live in is very oriented toward, gaining material things. And a consequence of that is getting into debt and getting into debt and getting into debt. And then before you know it, people have been with ADHD and without, they find themselves in this horrible, horrible situation and they need a tool to use. And the reason I bring up consumer debt, even though medical debt is the largest reason for people or the reason people most often file for bankruptcy, but consumer debt is a legitimate thing too. And so I was proud to be a part of that feature because I wanted to show also what's possible after
Yeah,
filing for
and thank you
bankruptcy.
for saying that it's also a tool because
Mhm.
a lot of people will literally put their mental health first before they even choose to use the tool, right? And so
Yeah.
this is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come to the podcast because I was like, your story, it's full of resiliency and
Thank you.
you like I also want to show because we have listeners from all walks of lives. We also have different demographics and ages that listen to the podcast. And you are such a great example of it's never too late. Like it's never
Mhm.
too late if you're committed and
Mhm.
you are fabulous and amazing. And so can you please tell
Lucy,
the
thank you.
listeners where can they find you and how can they connect with you?
So the best way is to sign up for my newsletter by going to my website at bemoneycoaching.com. And that's B like avispa, like the bee, bemoneycoaching.com. Sign up for the newsletter. And also on Instagram and TikTok.
I love it. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for coming to the podcast. We're going to get together because we have an
Yay.
event. Let me look at my calendar right
Oh,
here. September, and I believe you're going to it.
yes.
Well, I will
Yes.
private message you to tell you, but I cannot wait to get to know you more and give you a big hug because I seriously I am so proud of the work that you've done. And I
Thank
am
you,
so
Lucy.
proud of the embodiment that you have decided to create for yourself and the legacy that you're creating for your family. So thanks for
Thank
coming to
you.
the podcast.
Thank you so much. It means so much to me that you invited me. Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.